Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings, everyone. It's Hugh Hewitt from the ReliefFactor.com studio on the West Coast. Just looking at the latest number. I guess Maine is not called yet. It's the day after Joe Biden's big comeback. Bounce back Biden. Or is it bounce house Biden? I'm not sure, but Joe had a big night. A night I did not see coming. And a night that means, although Bernie will lead in the delegate count. I mean, he just will after they get California votes counted. Joe Biden's got 453 right now. Bernie Sanders has 382. Elizabeth Warren has 50. Bloomberg has 44. Pete Buttigieg has 26. Tulsi Gabbard has 1. But they haven't counted California, and they really won't get California. Thus far, they've awarded 72 to Bernie, 21 to Biden, 8 to Bloomberg, and 7 to Warren. And I expect by the end of the time counting that Joe Biden will fall behind Bernie. And then there are going to be two people in this race. I mean, Elizabeth Warren has got to get out, I think, but we'll see. I had written Joe Biden off. You know, I just didn't think.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by go. You know the thing.
You know the thing I thought I knew. The thing I thought I knew was that Joe Biden couldn't possibly get back into the ring, but he did. So bounce back Joe has trampolined into this temporary delegate lead, and we're going to see whether his comeback, which right now is as impressive as John McCain's Lazarus-like comeback in 2008, hangs in there. Now, I've been wrong since 2008, right? So this is no news to me when it comes to predicting what the American electorate does. I keep expecting generational change, or I keep expecting the predictable to happen. I've been just conventional wisdom central, and it just hasn't been worked. I thought Senator Kamala Harris would be the nominee by now. She's not. I thought she was going to succeed President Hillary Clinton, who didn't become president either time. I thought she was going to be president. I thought Mitt Romney was going to win in 2012. So, the boomers just are impossible to predict. Do you realize that both Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden are too old to be boomers? And though Bernie Sanders has won 33%, he's won away with it in California. We knew that. Even though that's the case, it feels like Biden won last night, right? And Mike Bloomberg just proved that you can burn $500 million and get nothing for it. American Samoa. You can buy American Samoa. Elizabeth Warren proved that it was a zombie campaign from the beginning. And suddenly, hey, boomer, suddenly that's an appeal to younger voters. This generation between World War II's greatest generation and the boomers is called the silent generation. And both Bernie and Joe are from it. They're not going to be silent now. I got to take my hat off. Everyone's got it. By the way, what do you think? 1-800-520-1234. Ben will take your calls. What do you think? The rundown today is coronavirus is still got people panicked, but it's not that bad, people. Would you please stop being crazy? It just isn't that bad. It's everywhere, and it's going to be everywhere, and it's going to have an economic impact, but it's not going to kill millions of people. Again, 36,000 people die in traffic accidents every single day. I mean, every single year in America. 36,000 people. We've had, 10 deaths in America, most of them in a nursing home in Washington State, because this is bad for old people who are frail. You don't want to get it if you're an old person and you're frail. But the Fed moved to cut a half point off the prime yesterday, and all of a sudden, the millennials are out there buying up every house they can, because this is my first pitch for andrewandtodd.com today. And for all you Seattle people who are either up late or getting up early to drive into Amazon headquarters or getting moved to HQ2, the 10-year Treasury's at 1.01%. I didn't think that was possible. That means you might have a 15-year interest rate in the twos. I don't know. Call up Andrew and Todd with Sierra Pacific at 888-888-1172. 888-888-1172 and say, I want to buy a house. I'm moving. Call up Gordon Wood in Old Town, Alexandria. Say, I want to live next to HQ2. Because you better do it now, because the only people that have won out of this panic that's been caused by the coronavirus are people who want to buy a house because interest rates are so low. So the coronavirus is out there. We'll get to that story. We know the Fed cut interest rates, but the big story is Super Tuesday. Sanders won Colorado. Biden won Minnesota. Biden won Massachusetts because Elizabeth Warren and Bernie split the left-wing vote. But I still think, I'm not going to write off Bernie the way I wrote off Biden. I'm not. I have no idea. The SEC went for Joe, the Pac-10 went for Bernie, and the Big Ten will decide it as is appropriate. Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. So we've got about 60% of the delegates left to pick. And if Elizabeth Warren does the right thing, she gets out. If she believes in what she says, you never know whether she does. But if you believe in what she says she believes in, she gets out. And Bloomberg is going to get out today. He's no dummy. He just played one of the debates. That just means Bernie and Biden. And let me be the first to tell you what this is. Not many people saw the movie in 2013. Not many people saw Grudge Match, which featured Henry Razor Sharp, played by Sylvester Stallone, exchanging blows with Billy the Kid McDonough and Robert De Niro. It was so bad. It was so bad it seared in my memory. These two old guys taunted into getting back into the ring. And that's what we've got now between Bernie and Biden. Neither of them are going to, well, Biden thinks he's the nominee and Bernie thinks he's the nominee. And Bernie thinks he got cheated by Obama. And all those young Bernie voters out there, they believe they got cheated by Obama. They think President Obama came in, pulled some wires, got Buttigieg out, got Klobuchar out, cleared the field, let the moderates consolidate behind his former vice president. Right now, by the way, California, Bernie's got 32.8%. Bloomberg got 15% for all the money that he spent. This is the biggest argument. Elizabeth Warren got 12%. Every one of the millennials out there that are Bernie bros, they're thinking they hate Elizabeth Warren this morning. They just hate her. Because if she was not in this race, if she had read the tea leaves correctly, Bernie would have swept last night. But there are no do-overs in politics. Biden is behind. He will be behind, but not by much. Not by much. Tulsi Gabbard technically qualified for a delegate in American Samoa. So she technically qualified for the next debate. The DNC is going to toss her out. Joe Biden he declared victory in Los Angeles last night. Cut number 23.
For those who've been knocked down, counted out, left behind, this is your campaign. Just a few days ago, the press and the pundits had declared the campaign dead. And then came South Carolina, and they had something to say about it. And we're told, well, when you got to Super Tuesday, it'd be over. Well, it may be over for the other guy. Tell that to the folks in Virginia, North Carolina, Alabama, Tennessee, Oklahoma, Arkansas,
really close to a Dean screen.
Minnesota.
Oh, we need Minnesota completely isolated. If that was close to a Dean scream. Joe did confuse his sister with his wife. Cut 22.
They don't call Super Tuesday for nothing. By the way, this is my little sister Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh no, you switched on me. This is my wife. This is my sister. They switched on me.
Joe, we love you. You're gonna okay. Bernie Sanders is not giving up. Cut number 20.
Thank you, Vermont. You know, it's a funny thing. 31 years ago today, we won the mayoral race in Burlington, Vermont. And we won that race against all of the odds. Everybody said it couldn't be done.
It's going to be great. It's going to be terrific. It's going to be a fight to the finish between Bernie and Biden. Oh, my gosh. Will the boomers and the silent generation never go away? The answer is no, they won't. Stay tuned, America. I'll be right back. That's the rundown for today. Welcome back, America. Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders for the next, how many months have we got? We've got April, May, June, and July. 4 months of them slugging each other. Now, I want you to remember it's going to be the most featured quote. And Dwayne, I need you to go find it because we need it on the board. It's actually the most important quote of the board. It's not by Biden. It's not by Sanders. It's by Robert Gates talking to Margaret Brennan. You remember when Robert Gates, perhaps the most respected figure in America on both sides of the aisle, former Secretary of Defense to President Obama, former Secretary of Defense to George W. Bush, when his memoir came out in 2014, he said, "I think Joe Biden has been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades." And he repeated that to Margaret Brennan, I think, on Face the Nation. And it'll be a campaign of gaffes and a campaign of the young millennials. I mean, AOC and the squad are not going to go away. They're not going to throw in the towel. If Elizabeth Warren gets out, it's going to be a one-on-one, knockdown, drag out all the way to Milwaukee. And I don't think it can be a contested convention. Karl Rove got his whiteboard out last night on Fox News, and he thinks it could be contested. Cut number 25.
Well, before California, here's the poor man's delegate selection.
Yeah.
Delegate,
You need some sound when you bust that.
Yeah, no. So I've been keeping track. Now, this is really crude because, it all gets affected by congressional districts. But roughly, it looks like tonight, Biden will take somewhere in the vicinity of, at the end of the evening, with what he's already won in South Carolina and earlier, it'll be 478 to Biden to 393 for Bernie before California. And then we have 113 delegates for Bloomberg tonight, 69 for Warren. We had the 26 for Pete before, 7 for Klobuchar, so there's 215 for the lesser candidates. But that's before we go to California with 415. Yeah. And if Bernie wins it, if the public polling out there is any guide, Bernie's going to come out of there pretty strong and erase this gap that Biden temporarily enjoys. So we spent the evening celebrating Biden's successes in these early months.
It was over what he was expected.
Way over what he was expected. But at the end of the night, this is about delegates. And tomorrow morning, in all likelihood, we may have Bernie with more delegates than Biden, but we will overlook the most important number tonight, which is 215 delegates out there and people who don't likely have a chance to win. And as a result, this raises the likelihood that there is a contested convention. The more people in this pot, the harder it is for somebody to get to 1,990.
Yeah, but I don't think it's going to grow much longer, and then they can release their delegates. I believe they can release their delegates. It really is a Bernie Biden knockdown triage now, if Elizabeth Warren does the right thing and gets out. And I don't know that she is. We don't know that she is. Nobody knows what she is. Bernie Sanders said it best, cut 21.
Now, I don't know what's going to happen later tonight. We're doing well in Texas right now. We won Colorado. And I'm cautiously optimistic that later in the evening, we can win the largest state in this country, the state of California. But no matter what happens, if this campaign, and I don't know what will happen, but if it comes out to be a campaign in which we have one candidate who is standing up for the working class and the middle class, we're going to win that election.
That's what he's not going anywhere. If you've got tax problems, you need to go to Axiom Tax Resolution. So just listen to me very closely. My friend down there, Perry Cronin, Axiom Tax Resolution is ready to talk to you. A lot of people are in trouble with the IRS today because of a divorce, a tough business year, a death, but rarely because of wrongdoing do people get in trouble. No, it's not for tax cheats. It's for tax beaten down people. Perry Cronin does care and will help you. Call him, 844-8-TAX-PRO. That toll-free number again is 844-8-TAX-PRO. Or contact Axiom Tax Resolution online at axtaxhelp.com. axtaxhelp.com. That's axtaxhelp.com. Perry Cronin will get you out of a jam, but you got to call him first, 844-8-TAX-PRO. I'll be right back, America. Admiral Stavridis joins us next. Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt in the ReliefFactor.com studio, joined by Admiral James Stavridis. He is, of course, retired from the United States Navy, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, former head of Southern Command. Now, of course, AdmiralStav.com, if you want to go to his website, a consultant with the Carlyle Group and a man about town, author of some extraordinary books, and sometimes a prognosticator about politics, not often. Before we turn to the Taliban deal, Admiral, you know Joe Biden well. Are you as surprised as I am by his Lazarus act last night?
Yeah, this is a political Houdini move if you look at it from the lens of 5 days ago. And I think a big factor, pretty obvious comment here, but was Pete Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar step up, and that is a big change. And I think the other surprise for a lot of political observers is Michael Bloomberg failing to really get traction. When those two things combined, I think is what buoyed Vice President Biden. And so, yeah, we got a real race.
We got a race, a two-person race that's going to go all the way to Milwaukee, and we'll have plenty of time to talk about that. But the Taliban deal with the United States is fresh top of mind. Jennifer Griffin reporting 2 minutes ago for the Fox News Channel that the Taliban have carried out at least 76 attacks across 24 Afghan provinces since the withdrawal deal signed Saturday. The U.S. conducted its first airstrike against Taliban on Wednesday after an 11-day lull. What do you think of the deal as of today, Admiral Stav?
It's shaky, and I think all of us thought it would be very, very bumpy. I think I said at the height of the optimism, which was a couple of days ago, that there might be a 50% chance that the deal holds together. You got to knock that back a bit. I've also seen reports, Hugh, that the president has spoken with the lead Taliban negotiator. I think, obviously, the White House correctly wants to hold this deal together. It's going to be very challenging just because of facts on the ground. And having commanded that mission for 4 years during a period of time where we had 150,000 U.S. troops there, there is still a piece of good news to observe here, which is that we only, I put that in quotations, but we only have 13,000 troops there. So we've withdrawn 90% of our troops, and the Afghan security forces are doing a reasonably good job with our support, financially, trainers, intelligence, logistics, of fighting the Taliban. So I think part of why the Taliban are continuing to attack the Afghan security forces, which is where they're confining those attacks, at least thus far. There have been no direct attacks against U.S. personnel or facilities. The Taliban are trying to create leverage going into these, hopefully, into these talks with the Afghan government. So going to be a very bumpy road. I think there's still a chance. I'm probably down somewhere to 1 in 3 about whether this deal can come together or not. But that's better than no deal, because I'll close with it. There's no military solution here. We're going to have to negotiate something.
Talk to us a little bit about you have a lot of experience with the Taliban. Do they have command and control over their various tribal affiliates? You think of the Haqqani network and all these different networks that we've been reading about for 20 years. Can they actually keep their bandits off their burrows for a few days, or are they always going to have freebooters out there operating on the fringes?
The latter, and certainly that's part of what you're seeing now. But I think as a broad comment, they control about 80% of their fighters in the field. That's still a lot of pirates cruising around the seas of Afghanistan. But that 80% is controllable, and they demonstrated it by reducing attacks from something around 80 a day down to 1, 2, 3 a day over that 7-day period. So they can control it. It is hard. The longer it goes, the harder it'll be for them. But again, that's a part of why I'd say it's only a 1 in 3 chance we can bring this thing off. And by the way, there's another tactical factor at work here, and that may be linked to these attacks. You may have seen that part of the deal the U.S. struck was to release 5,000 Taliban prisoners. President of Afghanistan, Ashraf Ghani, I can't blame him, is gagging on that one and saying, no, the U.S. can't simply release Afghan prisoners from Afghan jails. I do run a sovereign government here. So that's the sticking point, and that may be part of why the Taliban are reacting militarily to. So perhaps there's some negotiating trade space that our friend Ambassador Zal Khalilzad, with whom I've spoken in the last week or so, can go back in, negotiate that. Maybe that will reduce the attacks and put the deal kind of back on track. That's the best we can hope for.
When you looked at those pictures coming out of Doha, where Secretary of State Mike Pompeo met with the Taliban, there's one picture of him shaking hand with one Taliban leader, which is sort of historic. Did you recognize old faces from the briefing books, or has their leadership turned over since you turned over the reins of NATO?
Oh, I recognize many of those faces, and mostly they were on target lists with crosshairs across their foreheads. But we, the world moves on. We negotiate. We've done it in many other scenarios. The one who's a very tricky customer is their lead negotiator, Mullah Akhand, and he was front and center for all of this. But yes, this is a recognizable leadership team that we have tracked. We've killed many of them over the years. They have certainly gotten their licks in on us and on our allies. But in the end, so many of these insurgencies, probably 2/3 of them end with a negotiation. Read Max Boot's brilliant book, Invisible Armies, about how insurgencies end. They tend to end at a negotiating table.
Now, in terms of the persons that used to have crosshairs on them, what does victory look like to them? I always try and understand, what does the other side think victory looks like? Can they take a Kabul under the control of the existing? Do they just want Kandahar and the provinces of the south? Will they settle for that?
No, they want to return to Sharia law, and that's really the collision that is going to be very difficult to negotiate. In the end, I don't think the Taliban are going to simply be satisfied with a third of the seats in the Loya Jirga, their version of a parliament. I think that the Taliban want to see a nationwide Islamic state with a Sharia law attached to it. There may be a way to negotiate that, but here again, one of the real sticking points is going to be the rights of women, human rights, the universities, universal schooling. All of those are enormous gains that have been achieved over the 19 years, and I am very concerned that part of that may have to go away. So the Taliban, to directly answer the question, they want control of the government. They're willing to have I think, a democratic-like entity, but they want control. They think they have popular backing. I don't think they do. I think that in anything remotely resembling a real democracy, the Taliban will not be able to control a government, at which time they will probably lean back toward recreating the insurgency. So it's not a bright future.
Are you still, I read your tweet when the deal was signed, endorsing the deal. Are you still thinking that it was worth the candle to try this, and are you still behind trying this?
I am. And despite all the difficulties I've outlined, we have two things going for us here. One is that the Taliban are fundamentally unpopular. This is not a popular insurgency. We have very, very good independent polling. Look at the Asia Society's annual poll, The People of Afghanistan. It's gold standard polling. Taliban are much lower in popularity than any other insurgency I've seen successfully come to the end. So the people of Afghanistan don't want what the Taliban are offering. And number two is there's still an international consensus, to include the United States, that we should stand behind the work we've done here. And that means, I hope, that we can continue to fund the Afghan security forces. That's the key. When we lost Vietnam, you and I are old enough to remember those helicopters lifting off the roof of the embassy in 1975. It wasn't because we lost the war on the battlefield. It was because the U.S. cut off funding at that point, combined with the fact that the North Vietnamese were somewhat more popular than the Taliban. So two factors that I think could hold the wheels on this thing. Take a look at my piece, just came out yesterday in Time Magazine on this subject for a longer exposition on it.
So to wrap it up, how do you grade Secretary of State Mike Pompeo on this one?
On this one, I'd give him a B+. I think I don't know what else he could have done. And particularly, I'm going to give our negotiator, Ambassador Zal Khalilzad, former U.S. ambassador to the United Nations, former ambassador to Afghanistan, former ambassador to Iraq, Afghan American, speaks Pashto, Dari. We couldn't have invented him if he didn't exist, and I give him an A on his efforts.
So good idea to try. Imperfect execution up to the Taliban. When will we know? And even if they don't keep to it, this is the $64,000 question. Do you think we ought to get out?
I do not. I think our extremely minimal level of engagement at this point, 13,000 troops sounds like a lot. We have 160,000 troops deployed all over the world, 13,000 in Afghanistan to support this effort, I think makes sense. And that's a conditions-based approach. And I think if we do stay, it keeps pressure on the Taliban. Eventually, they will come back. We can renegotiate. It'll be a long, frustrating process, but the idea of just walking away, I think, sends a terrible signal globally, and I think it condemns Afghanistan to a very dark future. I would not advocate simply walking away.
Admiral James Stavridis, always a pleasure to talk to Admiral Stav. His website, admiralstav.com, and of course, he's with us once a week. Go and read any of his many terrific books, but I think probably Sea Power is the one you ought to begin with. Even here, we're talking about landlocked Afghanistan, but Sea Power matters every single day. We'll be back to it next week. 1-800-520-1234. 1-800-520-1234. Let me tell you about honorboundcoffee.com. It's the coffee I'm drinking this morning. It's the coffee you ought to go and subscribe to. It's the coffee. 4 different blends, 4 different grinds. Honorboundcoffee.com. 100% of their profits go to support the men and women in America's military families. 100% of their profits. So when you drink every cup of coffee, you are drinking exactly what you ought to be drinking. Something that supports the men and women in the armed services and their families that are left often for 9 months at a time by themselves, sometimes a year, sometimes 14 months in extreme conditions. That's why you need to support honorboundcoffee.com. Time for relieffactor.com as well. We got to send some of this to Bernie to keep him in the race. I think he's not going anywhere. It's going to be a long, drawn-out battle. Relieffactor.com, relieffactor.com. We got 4 different pills here. Icarian, curcumin, resveratrol, omega. Taking my lukewarm coffee. It's actually not lukewarm because of Donna's cop boomer that she gave me this week. Here's my warm coffee. I don't know. I think they go down easier with warm coffee, but it's a little bit harder to swallow the coffee. Whatever it is, you should be going back to wherever you're leaving on your long commute and take that relieffactor.com. I take it in the first hour, remind about in hours 2 and 3. Why? Because it works, it works, it works. 2 things you should do today. Order relieffactor.com starter pack for 3 weeks at $19.95 and order the famous 2-for-1 bags of Honorbound coffee offer at honorboundcoffee.com. Pay for 1 bag, get the second one free, get your subscription going. You'll be all set up for the day ahead. Don't go anywhere. Time to get your comments on Super Tuesday. Joe Biden is back, but is he bounce back Joe or bounce house Joe? We'll find out when we return to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt, 1-800-520-1234. Your comments on Super Tuesday in a moment. I do want to remind you it is Lent. Yesterday morning, I went to a church down in Orange County, Our Lady Queen of Angels, because there's a Father McCarthy, Father Joe McCarthy, Tom McCarthy, FatherTomMcCarthy.com. He's an Augustinian. Oh, he's a Villanova booster. Oh, my goodness, what a Villanova booster. But he's the fairly famed speaker, and he was giving a Lenten talk, and I had an hour and a half, so I went and I heard it. And in it, he talked about the Lenten practices. He talked about confession and the anointing of the sick, etc. If you don't have a Lenten practice, the very best thing to do is to do almsgiving, and the very best place to do it is with Food for the Poor. All this month, I'm talking about Food for the Poor and their effort to feed starving, and I mean starving children in Guatemala. And thanks to your generous donations at HughHewitt.com, we're off to a great start. But have you ever wondered what it's like to actually visit remote villages and actually see the work being done there by Food for the Poor? Listen to Hannah Jensen, morning show host for Colorado Springs on Q102.7, and how being on the ground with Food for the Poor impacted her.
This is my first experience actually seeing true poverty. What impacted me the most was the kids, because they all were just so joyful to see us, and I felt we were hope to them. And even if they do get sad at times, because I don't doubt that at all. I mean, they're hungry. That makes me sad for them, to be honest with you. They're kids who just want to be kids.
They want to be kids and they want to have some food, but it's hard to be a kid if you're hungry every day, and that's where you can come in. Please go to HughHewitt.com and make a tax-deductible donation by clicking on Feed Starving Families banner at the very top. That's Food for the Poor's banner. $80, just $80 gives a hungry child food for an entire year and water, clean water for life, because they put a well into the village from which they come. $320 blesses an entire family of four for a whole year. You can also call with your gift, 855-359-4673. That's 855-359-HOPE. 855-359-HOPE. You've been very generous. You keep it up all month long. Different people listen at different times. I will repeat this, but you can give once a week if you'd like. That's a great Lenten practice. To the phones, Carlin in Westlake Village, California. What do you think, Carlin?
I was shocked about the Biden win. The Lazarus lives. Excuse me, I better clear myself. I was very surprised this morning to find that Biden won everything. Well,
he didn't win everything. That's the media effect. Don't underestimate what Bernie did. Bernie's ahead in the delegate count. He's going to win more delegates last night. Elizabeth Warren and he split the left-wing vote. If she gets out, I don't know who's going to be their nominee, but he had a much better night than I thought he was going to have 72 hours ago.
Well, you're talking to somebody that's deep into Trump territory here in Cleveland, and that sentiment goes all the way to my family that's from Youngstown. You're old.
You betcha, Youngstown, more in the valley. So it'll be interesting when Biden and Bernie square off in Ohio. I think that's going to be one of the bellwether contests of that occurs on March 17th. Michigan is next week, then Ohio on March 17th.
Are you going to be doing any events? Going to be doing any events in the Buckeye State?
In the fall, I'll be back. Don't worry about that, Carla. Thank you, my friend, my listener. Pam in Columbus, Ohio. Let's stay in the Buckeye State. Hi, Pam.
Hi, yeah, go Bucks. As your last caller, it was like coming back from the dead. And I thought that Biden was dead in the water just from everything that's going on. He doesn't seem like he can remember anything, just made up stories. On the other hand, I just want to say, I wanted your opinion, because I'm a registered Republican. I got your advice about registering Democrat and then going ahead and voting for somebody who I don't even know who I would vote for if I do that. But, how do you think in all of this they're going to try to do, make Trump look like the big negative person?
Oh, it's going to be. Look, they can't turn to Trump until they finish their own troubles, right? They can't turn to Trump till they finish their own troubles. In the meantime, get in there and put Bernie back in the race. That's what I believe. Thank you, Pam. Cheryl in Chicago, you get the last word this hour. 1-800-520-1234. More calls next hour. I think Kornacki's joining me at the top of the hour. What do you think, Cheryl?
Good morning, Hugh.
I was surprised, but I'm going to tell you, I just don't think the Democrats can allow a socialist to define them as a party. I think they had to coalesce and shut this down. They don't want that on them. I really don't think they wanted him defining the party. But I'm impressed. I'm impressed with California, the number of individuals that came out to vote for Trump. I think California, that AB 5 has an effect on what they're doing, and I think Trump has a hope for California. That's what I believe.
You know, you are an optimist, Cheryl, but I am not about California. But you keep hoping. Thank you for calling. All of you people out there, please keep going over to HughHewitt.com. Coronavirus cases, 51 in California, 3 in Oregon. We got 11 in Texas, 3 in Florida, 2 in Georgia. And the 9 deaths in Washington state, of course, are defining the issue. More on coronavirus, more on the latest update from California when we come back. Don't go anywhere, America, during the break. I'll check on the updates from California. I just don't think we're going to know much until late in the day. Stay tuned, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
This portion of the Hugh Hewitt Show is brought to you by Axiom Tax Resolution.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. I'm Hugh Hewitt. On the morning after Joe Biden's Lazarus-like resurrection from the political dead, it's been taking him 72 hours, but for the moment he's got a delegate lead. Whether he will hold it or not, we turn to Steve Kornacki, who has emerged as the man who has the plan for figuring out what the hell is going on. Steve, I can't believe you're awake. Thank you for joining us this morning. When was the last time you had 2 hours of sleep consecutive?
I was going to say, I got about 60 minutes, about 4 in the morning, but it's fine. It's the season for this. I'm good to go. We got exciting stuff going on.
All right. Give us, first of all, an estimate of who will have the delegate lead after the dust settles in California and elsewhere around the country.
I think it's very likely Joe Biden is actually going to be ahead in the delegate count, even when California is counted. And I mean, that was just unimaginable. I mean, even yesterday morning, I don't think there was anybody that thought that. It's just a product of Biden ran up such huge margins in the Southeast. I mean, he won Virginia by 30 points, North Carolina by 20 points. And when you can put up margins that size in states that big, you get a pretty big delegate haul out of it. And so you add up all the Southeast, you look at him winning Texas, Massachusetts, Minnesota. By the time you get out to California last night, Biden had actually built a pretty considerable delegate lead. When they're all tallied from those states, he'll have a pretty significant delegate lead from those states, and it looks like it'll be enough to absorb even a 15, 20-point loss to Sanders in California if it ends up there.
So at this moment, the AP delegate counter has Biden at 453 and Sanders at 382. You don't see Sanders as closing that gap, and so we go into Michigan, which is next week, in a very pivotal primary, probably just one-on-one, right? That's what you expect? That's what I expect.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see Bloomberg carrying on. Warren, I just don't know sort of the psychology there, if she has some reason she wants to stay on. But delegate-wise, yeah, there's two here,
And so in that race, if yesterday Elizabeth Warren's votes are put into the Sanders column and not the Biden column, and I think the overwhelming majority of them would go to Sanders, not Biden, who would have won if Elizabeth Warren had not been in?
I think the problem there for Sanders, again, is Biden still wins the Southeast, and he still wins it big. The margins were just that large in those states. And really, that's a reflection of the black vote, heavily the black vote going for Biden by the margins it did. Obviously, that would have helped Sanders. It could have helped him in Texas, would have padded his margin a bit potentially in California. But I think we might even still be talking about a pretty good, Biden night after last night.
Is it over, Steve Kornacki?
Well, I got to be careful, right? Because you think about how we all looked at this race 10 days ago and we look how much the world has changed. But I would put it this way. If the coalition that Sanders has right now doesn't change, it's over. And the coalition that Sanders has right now looks a lot like the coalition he's had for 4 years, and he's had a limitation there. He's had an inability to break through with black voters. His campaign spent 4 years thinking and hoping and trying to change that. It hasn't changed at all. I mean, he's still getting like 16% of the black vote. That's what he was getting one-on-one with Hillary Clinton. And he is still struggling with older voters, older black voters, older white voters, older non-white voters. That was an issue 4 years ago. It's an issue now. If those two things don't change, and don't change very quickly, he's going to get clobbered in Florida, in Georgia, in Louisiana, in Mississippi, and he's going to fall farther and farther behind in the delegate race.
So I don't know if you saw the really awful 2013 movie Grudge Match. Sylvester Stallone as Henry Razor Sharp versus Robert De Niro as Billy the Kid.
See it, no.
Okay, two old boxers. I mean, really old boxers exchanging blows for round after round. It was really hard to watch. This is going to be really hard to watch because Bernie won't ever give up, right?
Well, and I'll tell you what, that's the one wild card I see in this. There's a debate scheduled. The next nationally televised debate is set for March 15th. And if what you're saying is right, it's one-on-one. Biden versus Sanders, one-on-one, 2 hours, national television. Maybe that's a wild card. How do they each hold up? How does Biden hold up? Biden has struggled in debates. Biden has struggled in some moments as a candidate, sort of public moments as a candidate. 2 hours, one-on-one. Let's see how that goes, because I say the Sanders coalition would have to change if there is something in Biden's performance in the next few weeks that unnerves Democratic voters, that could be a variable here. That could be a wild card. So I would flag that one.
You know, as I said on Meet the Press, I voted for Bernie in Virginia, and obviously there weren't enough of me who wanted the race between a socialist and a free market guy on the ballot to matter. How many Republicans crossed over last night from your exit polling?
Yeah, we were looking at, I think the share of the Democratic electorate in Virginia that identified as Republican was 6%. That was up from 3% a couple years ago. I mean, not having a Republican contest, having the open primary helped, but it was 6%. It wasn't as high as some folks were projecting.
And so that's not going to be a factor going forward.
Yeah, I mean, I think this talk that there were Republicans out there that were going to, for whatever reason, go for Sanders. Virginia is the exact kind of state where that can happen, and Biden won the state by 30 points.
Did the Republicans who crossed over go for Biden? Because like Bill Kristol, my old friend, wanted Biden. He voted for Biden. I voted for Bernie. We both wanted different races. He thinks Biden can beat Trump, and he's a never-Trumper, and I think Bernie is socialism embodied, and I wanted him. How many of those Republican crossovers were Biden voters, and what percentage of those does Biden get in the fall?
Yeah, the problem there was the sample size is so small of the self-identified Republican, it couldn't break it out. So you got to start looking at the map and just looking at, can you tell were these Republicans who are they're Republican in name only right now, but they've switched over to the Democratic Party like Kristol or for loyalty, or are these sort of Republicans who still want to vote for Trump but wanted to play a role here? And you can't really tell because it's such a small group.
Now let's talk about the most interesting comparison from the crosstabs I saw, which is Latino voters versus black voters. There's a divide in how they vote. Would you explain what it is, Steve Kornacki?
Yeah, and this is one place I should say where Sanders has made progress since 2016. He has definitely made inroads, significant inroads with Latino voters. We saw it in Nevada a couple weeks ago. He got an outright majority there. I believe he got 45% of the Latino vote in Texas, and it looks like he's hovering over 50% of the Latino vote in California. So that's why, and Colorado, by the way. Colorado has a sizable Latino population, and Sanders did really well there, too. So the best states for Sanders last night, outside of his native Vermont, he's doing really well. California, Colorado. He didn't win Texas. That's a disappointment for him, but he was competitive. He made inroads with Latino voters, particularly. This has to do with age. There's a bit more of an imbalance there. Younger Latinos, much more likely to vote than older Latinos. Sanders doing so much better with younger voters in general. So Sanders really made inroads with younger Latinos that showed up in California, Colorado, and to some extent Texas.
Now, the president tweeted 21 minutes ago, quote, "The Democrat establishment came together and crushed Bernie Sanders," all in caps. Again, even the fact that Elizabeth Warren stayed in the race was devastating to Bernie and allowed Sleepy Joe to unthinkably win Massachusetts. It was a perfect storm with many good states remaining for Joe. He added a minute ago, "So selfish for Elizabeth Warren to stay in the race. She has zero chance of even coming close to winning, but hurts Bernie badly. So much for their wonderful liberal friendship. Will he ever speak to her again? She cost him Massachusetts and came in third. He shouldn't." The president wanted Bloomberg out. He's getting what he wanted, but he's also getting Biden, which is, it seemed like he wanted Bernie. I'm not sure that Bernie would have been easier than Biden to beat. They're both formidable. What do you make of his take that Joe Biden has many good states remaining?
Yeah, it's true. I mean, I'm just looking ahead to the calendar next week. Mississippi seems like a small state when you think about it, but when you look at the numbers Biden's putting up, look next door in Alabama last night. The margin in Alabama was 62-16. Biden over Sanders, 62-16. If it looks like that in Mississippi, I suspect it will. That's going to translate into like a plus 30 delegate margin for Biden coming out of there. And if you just compare that, Michigan is actually the biggest state that votes next week. Sanders won Michigan narrowly in 2016. If Sanders were to beat Biden by a close margin in Michigan next week, 3 points, 4 points, something like that, what would that actually mean for delegates? He might net 10 delegates out of there. Meanwhile, he's going to lose 30 in Mississippi. The problem for Sanders, the biggest problem right now, I think, is there are a bunch of states left where you can see Biden winning landslides. And when you win landslides in a one-on-one race, you get a really big delegate advantage. And that puts the pressure on Sanders to find states where he can win landslides of his own. And I'm struggling to see those right now.
All right, so jump ahead to a potential Biden-President Trump race, Steve Kornacki. Where is the jump ball there? I mean, it is so astonishing that the silent generation versus the boomers. I mean, hey, boomer takes on just an ironic connotation then. We have less than a minute. Who's up for grabs? Who decides 2020 if it's Biden-Trump?
Can Biden make inroads into those Obama-Trump voters in places like Pennsylvania? You know, Biden always sells himself as the guy from Scranton. Can he make inroads in sort of those Rust Belt states versus how much of that suburban coalition that powered the blue wave in 2018 can Biden hold on to versus how many of them on the economy would go with Trump?
Oh, my goodness, it's going to be fascinating. And, of course, the wild card is going to be Joe on the stump and President Trump on the stump. You never know. Steve Kornacki, you're the Iron Man. Thank you for joining me this morning. Follow him at Steve Kornacki on Twitter. Follow me to the next segment, America, 1-800-520-1234. We'll take a look at world markets in the aftermath of the Fed cut and the apparent disappearance of Bernie Sanders and Joe Biden's surge. Markets look to be very, very happy that a socialist will not be running the United States. Stay tuned.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt on a day of stunning resurrection for Joe Biden on the path to the nomination, according to Steve Kornacki, other analysts as well. Not sure whether or not Bernie Sanders is going to agree with that. We do not know. What I do know, though, is the international economy is happy Bernie Sanders looks to be not the front runner. Overnight, England is up almost 2%, Germany up 1.5. Of course, this also plays into the international efforts to stimulate the economic global growth in the aftermath of the discovery and rapid spread of the coronavirus. This market story of the day brought to you by AndrewandTodd.com. Andrew Del Rey, Todd Avakian with, of course, Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They are lenders. They lend people money, and boy, are they busy. They have never been this busy. Why? The 10-year Treasury is at, sit down, I can't even believe this, 1.01%. Now, that's not your 30-year mortgage or your 15-year mortgage, but it's the rate on which all mortgages are based. So AndrewandTodd.com are refinancing loans that they did 3 months People are calling up and saying, I got that great rate at 3.9% or 3.8%. I want to redo it. I want to get 3.6 or 3 whatever it is. And I don't know. It depends on your credit, where you live, how much equity you have in your house, whether you're buying a second house, whether you're buying a rental property. But a lot of people, this will keep the economy afloat. Will be the home buying and home building economy because the money is so cheap. But to get it, you got to get it from a lender like AndrewandTodd.com. Call them, 888-1172, 888-1172. The big story is that, of course, overnight, futures just soared as Biden swept the South and made inroads and probably got to the delegate lead. The Dow futures climbing over 500 points, and who knows where the market will be by the end of the day. But before it got started, it was ready to go. And, of course, the Fed acting yesterday. So the big story is, Biden-Trump doesn't scare markets the way that Trump-Sanders did. Biden-Trump looks normal. It looks really old, but it looks really normal. And markets like that. Give AndrewandTodd.com a visit on the web. Answer a couple questions. They'll be back to you with the best option for consolidating debt, getting money out of your house to consolidate debt, or add a room or pay for college, whatever it is. AndrewandTodd.com. While you're online, please go over to HughHewitt.com and visit the Food for the Poor button. If you're giving alms during this Lent, if you're a Christian, you believe in a Lenten practice, hit that button at the top, Feed Starving Families. It's where you can contribute directly through Food for the Poor to be the hands of the people with the lost and the least. They're delivering food in the highlands of Guatemala where there is drought, where there is starvation. They are doing it. And Food for the Poor has been doing it for decades. They are so good at this. All you need to do to bless one hungry child for a year with food is contribute $80. $320, that's $27 a month, blesses an entire family of 4 with food for the year and water for life. You can call with your gift, 855-359-4673, 855-359-HOPE. But I think it's just easiest to go to HughHewitt.com and make a donation there. I want to go back to Joe Biden last night, declaring victory, cut number 23.
For those who've been knocked down, counted out, left behind, this is your campaign. Just a few days ago, the press and the pundits had declared the campaign dead. And then came South Carolina, and they had something to say about it. And we're told, well, when he got to Super Tuesday, it'd be over. Well, it may be over for the other guy.
So he sounded great there, but then he went on and got a little confused, doing a classic Joe, cut 22.
They don't call Super Tuesday for nothing. By the way, this is my little sister, Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh, no, well, you switched on me. This is my wife. This is my sister. They switched on me.
I'm Joe's husband. I mean, it really is one of those things about Joe. It's going to be a wild ride. Trump, Biden. It's going to be a wild ride. Don't go anywhere, America. Every bit of news you need, the analysis you must have right here on The Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of The Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-1170.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt from the ReliefFactor.com studio on the West Coast. We're having fun. My friend Ken Williams appears to have won his race for the Orange County Supervisorial District. They'll be counting votes in California forever. I'm not sure when Wisconsin votes, but Representative Mike Gallagher will be able to tell us. He'll also be able to tell us whether a Biden-Bernie race there will be up in the air. Hello. Good morning, Congressman. How are you?
Good morning, Hugh. How are you?
I am great. I understand it was your birthday and you got a cake from Congressman Banks with a picture of Winnie the Pooh on it.
I did. It was an homage to General Secretary Xi Jinping. Jim Banks and I work on a lot of counter-China tech stuff together, and so I told Jim I meant it. It was probably the best birthday present I've gotten from anyone other than my wife in the last 10 years.
Well, it was very funny. I saw the picture. Tell us, though, in terms of China's standing in the world, what their slow response on coronavirus out of the gate does, if anything, to their international reputation before we turn to politics.
Well, I think it severely tarnishes it. And I think if there is a silver lining that will come out of this, and I don't mean to be sanguine about it, I think we all need to be prepared on an individual level, on a community level, and figure out how we can be more resilient in the face of the continued spread of coronavirus. I think it is forcing businesses to reevaluate their supply chains and recognize that supply chains that run through Beijing are, though cheap, inherently fragile. And I do think, coupled with the steps we've taken in Congress, steps that the Trump administration has taken over the last 3 years to crack down on things like Chinese intellectual property theft, to spread the word around the world that Chinese state champions like Huawei and ZTE cannot be trusted, I do think we are fundamentally changing key assumptions on which the global economy operates. And I think over the long term, if we can do things like move more of our critical medical manufacturing back domestically here in the United States, I think we'll be stronger as a country, and the Communist Party will be weaker.
It will be. I actually think the black eye that they're going to have around the world for not telling us about this weeks before they did is going to be significant. And to the extent that this ravages the elderly and the health impaired and the poor, that's all on China. And do you think the world knows that, Mike Gallagher?
Not fully yet. I think the full extent of what the Chinese Communist Party has done to suppress information, jailing some of the early medical officials who were sounding the tocsin about the ongoing crisis, is not yet fully known. But just like we now know the extent to which they bungled the SARS outbreak in 2003, and by the way, our Deputy National Security Advisor was the reporter in Beijing who was breaking a lot of that story. So I can think of no better person on Trump's team to deal with this crisis right now. I think this story needs to continue to be told. I think those of us in public office need to continue to put pressure on the Chinese Communist Party to be more transparent. Hugh, just think of how many weeks went by that they were refusing the help of our best experts from the CDC, and thereby further endangering global health. And so I don't think this is just deep down to your average American citizen, the extent to which the corruption of the Chinese Communist Party has put their lives in danger, but it will over time.
It will, and now we have to also look at Iran. I don't believe we're getting anything close to the truth out of Iran about where coronavirus is. It's taken a couple of members of their parliament, a senior advisor to Khamenei. It's killed them. They are obviously not capable of combating the spread, much less providing adequate treatment even to their leadership class.
Well, I think Iran, communist China, take your picks. The countries that are most fragile in the face of the spread of COVID-19 are, no surprise, brutal, authoritarian countries who fear their own citizens, and out of fear of their own citizens refuse to provide those citizens with basic information they need to be safe and be healthy. And so this is further reason for us to shore up the sources of strength in the free world. And I think there's a lot of productive legislation that's coming out of it. I was proud to introduce the House companion to Senator Josh Hawley's bill, the Medical Supply Chain Security Act, which will require that manufacturers report imminent or forecasted shortages of life-saving or life-sustaining medical devices to the FDA. Again, this is all part of taking a look at our supply chains, particularly those that are medical supply chains or involve critical national security technology, And look where we are too dependent on China. And this change is not going to happen overnight, but it's long overdue. It's a necessary change. And I got to tell you, Hugh, I think regardless of how the 2020 presidential election shakes out, and I expect that President Trump will win, the new consensus position in terms of foreign policy and national security circles is a hawkish position on China. I don't see that changing anytime soon, and I give Trump and his national security team enormous credit for that.
Well, let's turn to whether or not you're right about President Trump winning re-election. I quote from Anna Palmer and Jake Sherman's Politico morning newsletter. The political universe is waking up to the reality of a resurgent Biden this morning, and with that comes a fresh and set of urgent questions about his campaign and the Democratic field at large. Sanders did get good news Tuesday night. He won California, Colorado, and Utah, and he sent an unambiguous signal to the crowd gathered here in nearby Essex Junction that he's in this contest for the long haul, and the us versus them, base versus establishment Democratic primary election will continue for weeks, if not months. First, what's that mean in Wisconsin? And then what's that mean, do you think, when you step back and look at the fall, if it's Biden after this bitter race concludes, just like it did in 2016 with the establishment's old candidate nominated?
Well, in Wisconsin, our primary will be on April 7th. And while I haven't done the math of all the delegates that are up for grabs between now and then, remember that Bernie won Wisconsin in 2016. So Bernie has a strong base of support. And I think that would suggest to me that we are headed for a protracted war of attrition between Bernie and Biden, particularly if Elizabeth Warren rightly sees that she has no path to the nomination and decides to get out, either explicitly endorsing Bernie or at the very least not endorsing anyone, and presumably the Warren voters would go to Bernie. So I think we have a couple months left of an argument between Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. Joe Biden, who everyone had written off as dead last week, is now resurrected, or at least it's Weekend at Bernie's. So we have Weekend at Bernie's versus Bernie right now. And I don't know how it's going to play out, Hugh. It does sort of, it's interesting to me that no one actually knows anything.
No, they don't. Look, every prediction I've made since 2008 has been wrong. But I want to look at one thing that former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates said in 2014 when his memoir came out about Joe Biden. Give a listen.
I think he's been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. Would he be an effective commander-in-chief?
I don't know. I don't know. I think I stand by that statement.
Robert Gates talking to Margaret Brennan about Joe Biden. This is going to be a campaign of votes from Joe Biden dating to 1973 in the Senate. We've got quotes from Joe Biden from just this week. This one.
We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
Can he actually rally the Democratic Party?
That's an open question, Hugh. I don't see him generating a lot of enthusiasm among younger voters, and you are going to need that enthusiasm in 2020. Now I could see him turning out the vote in places like Milwaukee. But again, Hugh, I mean, as of Friday, no one thought Joe Biden was going to be anywhere near the nomination, and here he is resurgent. So I hesitate to make any predictions. I would, however, point out a few things. You're right to bring up the Gates quote, which accurately describes something that's true, which is that Joe Biden has a horrible record on foreign policy. And in some sense, I think while Republicans seem to be cheering for a Trump versus Bernie matchup, I actually think a Biden versus Trump matchup may be more favorable to Trump because
I've always said that. I've always said that. Hunter, that's why I wanted Bernie. I said Bernie is going to give us a clear choice between socialism and free markets, but he's not the easier guy to beat.
Well, 100%. And it's the closest thing to a natural experiment you could conduct. In other words, though Joe Biden wasn't president, he was vice president. So you could just compare the 4 to 8 years that Joe Biden was in the White House to the 3 to 4 years that Trump was in the White House, and it clearly reveals that Joe Biden was utterly ineffective when it came to foreign policy. And I think people need to be reminded at how damaging the Obama-Biden foreign policy was, how big of a hit our standing took on the world stage, how big of a cut the United States military took, how creating vacuums in the Middle East allowed an opportunity for terrorist states to emerge. And I think once people are reminded of that fact, it's not going to look that favorable for Joe Biden. That being said, next week, something else could happen. And I think we should all be skeptical of pollsters and pundits telling us exactly how this is going to play out.
Don't put me out of business, Mike Gallagher. Last quick question, Admiral Stavridis.
Besides you, Hugh.
Besides
you.
Admiral Stavridis was on last hour. He still said the Afghan withdrawal agreement, he gave it a 50% chance of working last week, down to a third this week, still the only way he could see going forward. What do you make of its status? Do you think we press on with it?
Well, I think it is on life support, and the Taliban seems to be not interested in keeping the agreement. I've been reading through the wisdom of a great Wisconsinite, Mel Laird, who managed Vietnamization at the time as an effort to get out of Vietnam while preserving the sinews of strength in the Defense Department. And I think that's the trick we need right now. How can we responsibly withdraw so that we don't continue to pour money down in Afghanistan that could be better used in Indo-PACOM? But it is too early to tell. I really hope we can reduce our posture in Afghanistan without endangering the homeland, but we'll see where it goes after this week's event.
Representative Mike Gallagher, always a pleasure. Thank you. Follow him at Rep Gallagher on Twitter. Follow me, of course, over to Honor Bound Coffee. I'm holding it if you're watching on HughHewitt.com or Univision, or if you are, as you should be, a member of the universe. And you get the after show with Generalissimo and soon the Sunny Bunch Rebel Media Podcast and more coming on Universe subscribers. We got lots coming for you. Honor-Bound Coffee will be in every shot. Why? Because honorboundcoffee.com supports military women and military men who are in the front lines and their families at home. They do so by supporting groups like the Injured Marine Semper Fi Fund and others. 100% of their profits, again, go to support them. So every sip of coffee you take is supporting the troops. Please don't forget that. Get behind Honor Bound Coffee. Get behind the troops. Get behind doing your part so that they can continue to do their part for us. Also, time to remind you about ReliefFactor.com. Again, if you're watching on Town Hall TV or Univision, you see the North Carolina blue package bordered in lime green. ReliefFactor.com providing support for the temporary relief of the minor aches and pains that accompany aging, exercise, and commuting. I'm talking to the commuters now who are stayed up too late to watch Super Tuesday, and they're getting into their car and they wish they had more sleep and their back already hurts. You should be taking ReliefFactor.com. I got to double down on this stuff. This rotator cuff nonsense is really a pain, not in the neck, but close in the shoulder. I'm doubling down on this. ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Go get your starter pack for $19.95. You'll thank Pete and Seth Talbot for starting the company, for putting out this great product, and your long drive will feel better every single day. Coming right back, Representative Jim Banks, who gave that funny cake to Mike Gallagher, joins me next, America. Don't go anywhere. Stay right here listening to the news you need, the analysis you must have on the day after Super Tuesday. Lazarus, Joe Biden, back on top. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the
Welcome back, America. Hugh Hewitt, joined now by Representative Jim Banks from Indiana's 3rd Congressional District. Follow him at Rep. Jim Banks. Congressman, good morning. Just had your friend Gallagher on. I love the cake you gave to him with Winnie the Pooh and General Secretary Xi. He did too.
Well, hey, Hugh, good to be with you. Who knew that Mike Gallagher was a Winnie the Pooh fan?
Yeah.
I learned that yesterday. I guess if you're a Green Bay Packers fan, you got to turn to Winnie the Pooh for a little bit of excitement in your life. But in all honesty, Winnie the Pooh is banned in China. A lot of people don't know this, but because it's a part of a meme that makes fun of Chairman Xi, they've banned Winnie the Pooh. So we had a little bit of fun with the cake. My staff spent a couple of hours the night before making it, and I have a Mandarin-speaking scheduler on my staff who wrote "Happy Birthday" on the cake, and we were glad to give that to our friend Mike for his birthday yesterday.
That's fine. It's good that people have a sense of humor. I don't think the General Secretary is going to be laughing, though. Congressman, let's talk a little bit about Indiana, and specifically, you've got a primary coming up. You've got a presidential election coming up. It's the heart of the manufacturing Midwest. What are they going to think about a Biden-Trump race?
Well, where I come from, Hugh, the president is so popular, and it's because of the blue-collar boom, the resurgence of manufacturing jobs. Where I come from in Northeast Indiana is a lot like where you come from in Northeast Ohio. It's blue-collar. It's an area where we have a lot of what we call Reagan Democrats back in the day who often would vote for Democrats, but these days there's no way that they will abandon President Trump. He is enormously popular because to every person that I talk to, they know they're better off today than what they were 4 years ago. And that's what I like about the contrast between Trump and Biden. It's going to be if that's what the race comes down to, but we have a long ways to go before that's the case, it's going to be whether or not you believe you're better off today than you were under the 8 years of the Obama-Biden economy, and I don't know anybody that can say that they aren't.
Now, Ruth Marcus, my lefty friend at the Washington Post, old line liberal, writes this morning on Twitter, Biden has always had deficits as a candidate in terms of focus and discipline. Those have not disappeared. And voters perceive with some basis that he has lost a step or two. He is and perhaps always was the best candidate that Democrats had to take on Trump. That doesn't change. Do you agree with her?
I think it's to be determined. I mean, Biden is a gaffe machine. I mean, my wife doesn't go on Twitter. Every day I'm showing her a different Twitter clip of a Biden gaffe. The gaffe that you played a little bit ago of Biden turning to his wife and then his sister. I mean, these are the types of gaffes that we're going to become used to. I don't know that matters when it comes to vote tallies, but there will be questions in the minds of voters of whether or not he's up for the job. And we've seen firsthand that President Trump is up to the job and how he's handling the coronavirus response, how he's handled everything from Kim Jong-un to Afghanistan. I mean, this is a president that's exceeded our expectations, and all the while there will be questions about whether or not Biden can rise to the moment, as Trump has so well done over the past going on 3.5 years.
But what happens if the blue-collar boom, Congressman Banks, what happens if the blue-collar boom takes a pause because of coronavirus, as it almost certainly will in Q1?
I don't think it will be enough that voters in my district will feel it. I mean, they've seen job growth, they've seen higher wages. There might be a bumpy road ahead, but I suspect that it won't be enough that it will disrupt their appetite for reelecting Donald Trump to another 4 years.
Now, I also got to ask you, as I asked Admiral Stavridis and Mike Gallagher about the Afghan withdrawal agreement. Mike Pompeo was on, the Secretary of State with Brett Baird defending it. Admiral Stavridis endorsed it this morning. What do you think of it 72 hours into it?
Well, there are a lot of questions about whether or not the Taliban is up to keeping their end of the deal, and that's what I'm concerned about. How do we ensure that they do just that? Now, I got to tell you, I mean, I served in Afghanistan. I want to bring our men and women home as much as anybody. This is a issue in places like Indiana where 80% of my voters support this president's efforts on both sides of the aisle to bring our troops home and end this war. What I do like about what President Trump has kept on the table is that we will keep a residual force, a light footprint in the region for counterterrorism purposes. And if we do that, and bring the vast majority of our troops home that have been focused on building up Afghanistan's economy, building up their government. The failed exercise of the last 20 years. That's what this deal does. We're going to be briefed later today, Hugh, in a classified setting by the administration, and I look forward to learning more about the intricacies of the deal, but I believe the president's on the right track. Congressman Jim Banks from Indiana's 3rd Congressional District. Keep fighting the good fight. Follow him at Rep. Jim Banks. Follow me to Hour Number 3 America. In the meantime, head over to HughHewitt.com and think about, if you haven't done anything for Lent yet, we're well gone. It's a week past Ash Wednesday. Plenty of time to get started. The 40 days are not over. And you can help out Food for the Poor by going to HughHewitt.com. Go to the banner at the very top, which says Feed Starving Families. $80 feeds a child for a year. And Food for the Poor knows how to get it done. Or you can call them at 855-359-4673. That's 855-359-HOPE. But the very best thing to do is to go to HughHewitt.com and hit that Food for the Poor banner. Stay tuned, America. It's the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Morning glory, America. Bonjour, hi, Canada. Greetings to all my 400 affiliates across the United States on a Super Wednesday. The aftermath, Joe Biden pulls the Lazarus, coronavirus spreads, and all the news you need is right here. Latest on coronavirus, Senator James Lankford. Good morning. It's great to have you. I just want to give the numbers so people know what we're talking about. 93,017 people infected globally. 3,201 people dead, including 9 in America. The Tokyo Olympics may be postponed. Hong Kong has followed the half-point Fed cut. What's your reaction generally to coronavirus? Then we'll turn to Super Tuesday. Let's start with health and then go to politics.
Yeah, we've got 60 different countries that are involved, including spreading around the United States, but it's not rapidly spreading. CDC still came out yesterday and said there's still a low threat, low risk in the United States. This is everyone pay attention to basic taking care of yourself on it, and if you feel sick, to be able to go check it out. This week, we have rapid tests that are actually coming to about 2,500 locations across the United States. They've worked very hard to be able to develop a diagnostic. They can get out to different hospitals. That will continue to accelerate in the next couple of weeks as they develop a test, then test the test, and then get it out there so they can actually do the test. That's all just the standard process of trying to get something up. But this is a brand new virus, and being able to get something out there is really important so people can just know. At this point, people have a cold or a flu, they immediately think, oh my gosh, it's coronavirus. It'll be helpful for people to actually get a faster test that they can actually develop or determine which way that their health is going.
You know, it's kind of useful, although I wish him a quick recovery, for the Pope to have gotten a cold, because he got a very public cold and people in Italy were worried he had coronavirus. He said, no, I just had a cold. I got tested. It's not, people will get colds. They will get the flu. And even people who get coronavirus, the mortality rate, if you're not old or otherwise health impaired, is very low.
Yeah, it is very low. So you take, for instance, people 20 years old and younger. Worldwide, we've had one person die from coronavirus, 20 years old and younger. This is apparently a virus that does not affect the young. People that are 50 and up are higher risk for this. But even those, it's those with other health complications that are most at risk. So again, everybody needs to be able to pay attention to it. We get that and should. But at this point, there's still a responsibility to be able to everyone take care of yourself and to know that the risk in the United States is low, and the folks that are doing the science are busting their tail to be able to develop not only the vaccine, but the diagnostic tools to get those out as many places as they possibly can, and so people can track their own health. But in the meantime, you're right. Take care of a virus, take care of a cold, take care of the flu, get your flu shot. All those things will help you in the days ahead.
Dr. Fauci will be joining me tomorrow for the latest on the update on the science. Let's turn to politics, Senator Lankford. You serve alongside of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. You served under the presiding officer of the Senate, Vice President Biden, when he was vice president for 8 years. So you know a lot of these players. I'm stunned. I thought Joe Biden was down and out after Nevada. I was wrong, and that's my business. You get wrong sometimes, but the Lazarus thing he's pulled here is truly amazing. What do you see going forward?
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable. Now it's going to be a matter of digging in. There a lot of folks on the establishment side were pushing, obviously, really hard for Mayor Pete and for Amy Klobuchar to be able to drop out and endorse Joe Biden. There's going to be equal amounts of pressure now for people to push on Elizabeth Warren to be able to drop out and endorse Bernie Sanders going forward. The difference in many of the states last night between a win or a loss for Bernie Sanders was Elizabeth Warren's numbers, and so there'll be a lot of that talk back and forth, and we'll just see what direction they choose to go, who chooses to stay in and who drops out. Bloomberg is a math guy. He is apparently one that watches the numbers pretty close everywhere, and he should see numbers that are exceptionally low. He spent $500 million last night and only got 46 more delegates than I did, and I didn't even run. So it's a pretty painful thing for him to see the math.
So if it does become just a two-person race, the states seem to favor Joe Biden, who won in Oklahoma convincingly. And when you look at a Democrat who wins in Oklahoma versus a Democrat who wins in Vermont, and you move to Michigan, Ohio, and Pennsylvania, you kind of think the Democrat who wins in Oklahoma is going to do better than the Democrat who wins in Vermont, don't you?
So here's the interesting little factoid. If you go back to 2016, Bernie Sanders overwhelmingly beat Hillary Clinton in Oklahoma. So you look at 2016 Oklahoma, where Bernie Sanders wins in a head-to-head with Hillary Clinton. He loses head-to-head with Joe Biden.
That means Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. How does that race play out? We're going way ahead. How does that race play out?
Oh, that's impossible to be able to track right now. You and I both know predicting tomorrow what's going to happen and who's going to drop out later on today is tough to do. But you look at the side by side of accomplishments, side by side of the task. Both those folks have experience being around the White House, but you look at the incredible economy that we have right now and what's happening in jobs, what's happening in the recovery, what's happening in just world trade, and how he's handling it. There's a lot of support and a lot of energy behind President Trump right now, rightfully so.
Well, do you think that will be diminished if the economy takes a hit in Q1 because of coronavirus? And well, I can't say obviously. There are some sectors of the economy like Amazon and medical stocks are way up this morning, for example. There are some parts of the economy that do well. People are buying homes like they've never bought homes before with the Fed cutting interest rates down, a 10-year bond at 1.01%. But I still think we will see a contraction in Q1, right?
Yeah, it's pretty likely we will, just based on you look at energy and energy consumption in China right now, how low it is based on so many factories sitting idle, so many people not traveling. Obviously, that affects global gasoline stocks and energy. All of those things affect the entire world economy. Prices drop for that, and people enjoy that lower price here, but it also affects job development and job growth. That's a significant part of our economy. So we'll see how this balances out. But whether you're an airline stock or whether you're a cruise ship or whether you're a resort or whether you're major events, all of those are having to be able to look at and determine what they're going to do and how they're going to play this out. And the great unknown on this, Hugh, is for most of these events, when we've had a virus like this that is spread, once it gets to summertime, it dramatically slows down. So can we get to May, for instance, keep the threat risk low in the United States? It warms up. We see less movement. It gives more time for us to be able to develop a vaccine while we have lower infection rates, and then we're able to get on top of it by the fall. We don't know that yet, but that is a hope for everyone to be able to see a dramatic drop, and that would affect the economy a lot in the summer and fall.
So, Senator Lankford, looking ahead to the rest of the political year, does anything except confirmations get done in the United States Senate and the Congress? We need a stimulus, obviously. It would be very good for the economy given the coronavirus contraction. But I don't see this Congress effectively operating, do you?
No, I don't. So the hope is to be able to get the appropriations work done. There is an agreed-upon number to be able to go through to be able to get that complete. I'm doubtful even that will get done. What we have seen in previous times is we get close to appropriations being done, it all breaks down in negotiations, and we punt it till after the election. Nominations will be a major part of what we'll continue to be able to do. We still hope to be able to finish some things on prescription drugs. We're very, very close on this. It's something that's been negotiated for a very long time, but I'm doubtful that Democrats are going to vote for something that the president strongly has supported all along and give him a big win right before the election. So I would assume at the very end they will step back and say, no way, we're not going to agree to this. This is crazy, and that they'll walk away from it and give some excuse when it's something that has been very close for a long time. But
will they pay a political price for that, Senator? Will they pay a price for that if they walk away from prescription drug reform? Because that is actually one of the issues that polled very, very strongly on people's minds.
That, again, it's a great unknown. I would expect they would walk away and say the president didn't want to cut prices for prescription drugs enough. We wanted to do a lot more, and he wanted to do less. And so it's all his fault, and it becomes everyone pointing at everyone else. And I think the American people just throw up their hands and say, I don't know which one it was on that one, and walk away. And we've seen that before. There's lots of times that we've had items blocked in the Senate, and the minority has then walked away and said, you know what's not our fault, when the whole time it really was theirs in the background, killing a bill as it moved through, so they can walk away and say this is a do-nothing Senate, and so it's not our fault. So again, American people don't track it that much. They just want to be able to see the results. And at the end of the day, I hope that we can get this stuff actually done because we are so close to so many of these issues.
Now, a last question asked for crystal ball, and it's always dangerous. I was wrong 72 hours about Joe Biden, and so I'm asking you to do a dangerous thing. But let's look at the United States Senate after November. Last night, Jeff Sessions and Tommy Tuberville proceeded to the runoff in Alabama. And that means Doug Jones is done, in my view. So the Republicans are up one. That means 54 to 46, but they've got contests all over the place. How do you feel about holding on to the Senate, James Lankford?
I actually feel very good about holding on to the Senate. Well, we have really remarkable folks in those Senate races that are most contested. We saw Cory Gardner beat an incumbent 5 years ago, I guess 6 years ago now. He is a remarkable leader in the Senate, so that race in Colorado will be tight and tough, but he's a great leader on that. The people of Maine know Susan Collins extremely well. There has been outside spending against Susan for now a year and a half, just pounding on her with negative ads over and over again. But the people in Maine know Susan. And so we've got some really tough races that are out there, but we've also got some great folks, and that's what makes the difference.
I think Martha McSally is tough in Arizona. I believe Tom Tillis is tough in North Carolina, David Perdue in Georgia. I'm pretty optimistic as you are, Senator Lankford. We will see. Please keep coming back and have a very good day in Washington, if that's possible. Don't go anywhere, America. 1-800-520-1234. Connects you to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show are brought to you by Food for the Poor.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. Thanks so much for listening to the program today. AndrewandTodd.com. They are mortgage lenders. Bring you the business story of the day every single morning. Andrew, Del Rey, Todd Avakian. They've been my friends for many, many years. I've known Andrew for over 20, and they are the very best lenders. I emphasize that they're Sierra Pacific Mortgage. They lend you money, soup to nuts. They get your application. They walk you through it. They get you qualified. They lend you the money. They close the deal. You buy the house. You buy the investment property. You refinance the house that you open. AndrewandTodd.com. That's where you start. You answer a couple of questions. They'll be right back to you with the very best rate. And the mortgage, the business story of the morning is really the story of what Andrew and Todd do. There's going to be a housing purchase boom in the United States unlike anything we have ever seen, because we've had a great economy for 8 years, actually, for 10 years, for 12 years, and it's been just booming under Trump, the blue-collar boom. We have a panic in the financial markets because of coronavirus and a half-point Fed cut. That has led the 10-year Treasury to drop precipitously to the lowest level of my lifetime. The 10-year Treasury is at 1.01%. Now, I'm 64 years old. I've been around a long time. It ain't never been at 1.01%. The interest rates for the 30-year fixed rate mortgage and the 15-year fixed rate mortgage and ARMs and VA loans and FHA loans are all based off of that 10-year Treasury in some combination of interest rates. So if you've ever wanted to buy a house, now is the time. If you've ever wanted a rental property, if you ever needed to consolidate debt, you know you've got equity in your house, now's the time to do it. And by the way, even if you bought a house last year, you ought to call 888-1172 and ask Andrew and Todd whether or not you should refinance. 888-1172, because honestly, we've never been in this territory before. What the Fed did yesterday just rocks home building. They're hoping home building and home buying brings America out of the little dip from the coronavirus, as well as a dawning awareness of what James Lankford just said. Not one person has died under the age of 20 in the world. The panic is just way over the top, but that's what the media does, overreact. But the markets have overreacted in favor of people who need to get money out of their house or refinance or buy a home. 888-1172 connects you to AndrewandTodd.com. I'd also love for you to connect, please, with Food for the Poor. I want you to listen to Hannah Jensen. She went she's a morning show host for our Colorado Springs affiliate in the Salem Radio Network, Q102.7. She went down to Guatemala to visit the poor that the Food for the Poor people serve, the starving kids. Here's what she said.
This is my first experience actually seeing true poverty. What impacted me the most was the kids, because they all were just so joyful to see us, and I felt we were hope to them. And even if they do get sad at times, because I don't doubt that at all. I mean, they're hungry. That makes me sad for them, to be honest with you. They're kids who just want to be kids.
They just want to be kids with a full stomach. They just want some rice. Food for the Poor brings more than rice. They bring clean water, good food, hope. They bring hope. And in this Lenten season of almsgiving, you can do that right now at the Feed Starving Families banner on my website. Or you can call you can call 855-359-4673. That's 855-359-HOPE. I haven't played any Mike Bloomberg, and I should play cut number 14. Mike Bloomberg getting real last night at a rally in Miami.
I don't know whether you're going to win any. If you don't have to win states, you have to win delegates. And I think what happens here is nobody gets a majority. At best, somebody will have a plurality. By definition, somebody will have a plurality. And then you go to a convention, and then we'll see what happens in the convention.
Do you want a contested convention? Do you want a contested convention?
Well, I don't think that I can win any other ways. But contested convention is a democratic process.
He is clearly doing the math today. Overnight, his advisors began to indicate he'd be dropping out today. We'll see. It clearly is a Biden-Bernie race, and it's really almost a Biden-Biden race. Can Biden not beat himself in the months ahead? That's really what it is. 1-800-520-1234. I'll be joined by Tim Murtaugh, Director of Communications for Trump 2020 next. Don't go anywhere, America. You're listening to the Hugh Hewitt Show.
This portion of the Hugh Hewitt Show has been brought to you by MyPillow. Call 800-951-5493 or go to MyPillow.com and be sure to use a promo code HUGH.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt on the Hugh Hewitt Show in the ReliefFactor.com studio, joined by Tim Murtaugh, for the last 14 months, Director of Communications for the Re-elect Donald Trump campaign. Good morning, Tim. How are you?
Doing well, Hugh. How are you doing?
Oh, bad. I took a big swing at Joe Biden and missed. I thought he was deader than a doornail on Saturday, and then he wins South Carolina. He sweeps Super Tuesday, so I'm way wrong. I just don't understand Democrats, Tim.
Well, I don't know that anybody does. I don't know that they understand themselves, Hugh. Look, I think you could be forgiven for thinking that Joe Biden was dead. Everybody on the planet thought that his candidacy was dead. And you know what? Let's not forget, there's a reason why everybody thought Joe Biden was dead in the water. It's because he's a terrible candidate, and it doesn't just have to do with the gaffes that he does, that he spews out when he's up on stage, like he did again last night, confusing his wife with his sister. It's because of all kinds of stuff. It's because of his record. It's because, remember, Democrats thought, we can't nominate Joe Biden because Trump will kill him with this Hunter Biden and Burisma Ukraine business, right? Do you think that's gone now? No, it's still there. It's just in the media's consciousness, it slipped away for a little bit. Biden, 4 days ago, was widely and universally acknowledged as a terrible candidate. Ain't nothing changed about that. He's still bad. And also, I would caution people in the Joe Biden camp who are celebrating this morning, and Biden had a good night last night. There is absolutely no denying that. It was unexpected, and he had a good night. But the celebration this morning is like spiking the football in midfield. You don't do that. This game is not over.
Well, let me play for you, Tim Murtaugh, which I believe will be the most played. It's not a gaffe. I've got all of the Biden gaffes on one side of my radio screen. I've got dozens and dozens of them. This is not a Biden gaffe. This is Margaret Brennan and Robert Gates, when the former Secretary of Defense's memoir came out in 2014, Margaret Brennan read back to him a quote in it about Joe Biden. Here is what Margaret Brennan said to Robert Gates.
I think he's been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. Would he be an effective commander-in-chief?
I don't know. I think I stand by that statement.
That statement was about Joe Biden, Tim Murtaugh. And that's the reality of Joe Biden's record.
It is. He's exactly right. And we have highlighted that little passage many, many, many times. And if Biden does, in fact, turn out to be the candidate, you'll hear more about that. It's all kinds of issues, though. Just in the area of foreign policy, you could spend half a day talking about it. Like the vote for the Gulf War, which is front and center. Bernie's been beating him up about it, and the president does as well. But, he's been wrong on China recently. I mean, even this year during this election, he says, come on, man, China's not a threat. China's not an economic threat. And then in the other breath, he says, "Oh, China is eating the president's lunch and all that stuff." So he doesn't know what he thinks. He's made bad choices in the past. He's made bad votes in the past. Here's a guy who's been around Washington for 96 years, I think, and there's so much in his record that will be used against him. And just the energy and everything that he brings he's a bad candidate, and everybody knows it.
Tim Murtaugh, Director of Comms for Donald Trump campaign. I'm really curious how the cash register rang at Donald Trump headquarters last night. I know you had an extraordinary February. I know the little donations rolled in. What about when they watched Joe Biden and it became obvious that we were not going to walk into a socialism versus capitalism, which is what I wanted to have it framed. It doesn't look like I'm going to get what I wanted. I voted for Bernie, but it doesn't look like I'm going to get what I wanted. It's going to be the old Democratic establishment trying to take down Trump again.
Well, we don't know that. We don't know. It's good. Still, this is going to go all the way to their convention and could bubble over onto the floor of their convention. I think anyone who tells you that they know how this is going to turn out is full of it. So I think last night, for the Trump campaign's purposes, it was really, truly a heads we win, tails they lose kind of situation. So either we get Joe Biden and the terrible candidate that he represents, and again, it's not just the gaffes, or we get Bernie Sanders, who is the self-described socialist. And it doesn't matter to us. We've been saying this for over a year. It does not matter to us who the president's opponent is, because the atmosphere in the Democrat primary has been Bernie Sanders issues. He has been dictating what the candidates are running on. All you got to do is watch one of the debates. All they do is talk about Bernie's proposals. It's a government takeover of the healthcare system, eliminating private health insurance provided by your employer, the insurance you get through your job. That's gone for 180 million Americans. Free health care for illegal immigrants, and open borders immigration policy, embracing the Green New Deal, killing the fossil fuel industry and 10 million jobs that go with it, and then raising taxes to pay for all that nonsense. It doesn't matter if Bernie is the candidate or not. Those issues are on the ballot. And so when our voters, when the president's supporters see that and know that it doesn't matter which one of these guys gets thrown free of the wreckage, it's a heads we win, tails they lose sort of situation. Absolutely, people donate. They want to support this president. They know he is steamrolling toward a victory, toward no matter who the candidate is that he runs against. Maybe the victory looks a little bit different one way versus the other, but it's still a victory.
Now, my old friend, and maybe yours, Bill Kristol, voted for Joe Biden yesterday in Virginia. I voted for Bernie Sanders. You know the Never-Trumpers wanted Biden, and you know that the Democratic establishment want Biden because they consider him to be the most electable in places like Pennsylvania, where, of course, he's Scranton Joe. What do you make of that argument that he's the most electable Democrat?
Well, I remind people that just 4 days ago, most professional Democrats thought he was cooked and that his electability argument was out the window, not just because he gets up and says and does dumb things when he's on stage. He forgets what state he's in. He misidentifies people. He claims to have been places where he obviously was not. It's not just because of that. It's because of his voting record. It's because of what we're going to hold against him from votes and statements that he made in the past on public policy. And it's because of the whole Hunter Biden and Burisma and Ukraine natural gas company issue. That's why Democrats thought he was dead, because they thought there's no way that he could win a general election. His electability argument was shot just 4 days ago. He has now in the last 96 hours somehow become super Biden. It's just that they got desperate because they thought Bernie was worse. That's it. It's not. Joe Biden has not been rehabilitated. He has been rescued. There's a big difference.
Wait, let's pause on. They got desperate because they thought Bernie was worse. And it's not that he's been rehabilitated. He's been rescued. How long you work on that?
Actually, that just came out. I didn't plan that.
He's been rehabilitated. He's not been rehabilitated. He's been rescued. That's remarkable. Let's talk a little bit, though, about Burisma. If you talk about Burisma and Hunter Biden, you're talking about Ukraine. Ukraine got the president impeached. Is the president going to want to talk about Ukraine?
The president didn't do anything wrong, so there's nothing for our side to be concerned about whatsoever. He had a conversation with the president of Ukraine. Anybody who cares to can read the transcript and know exactly what was in that conversation, and there's nothing wrong with it. So, no, we have no concerns about that. And I think that what has been going on the Democrat side is that they realized, of course, remember they tried to impeach him because he was a Russian agent first, right? That's what they said. Oh, my gosh, he's a Russian agent, got to get rid of him. And that fell apart under the Mueller report like we knew that it would. So they moved on to Ukraine, and that ran its course, and it's over now. And the president has been acquitted and exonerated. That's over. So we have no problem talking about Ukraine and Hunter Biden and his involvement there, because the question really is, here's this guy they were throwing millions of dollars at, these huge monthly payments to Hunter Biden, where he had no background whatsoever in the natural gas industry, paying him by this Ukraine gas company at the same time that his father, the vice president, was in charge of U.S. policy on Ukraine. Now, what did those people want for all that money? What was it they were buying? It certainly wasn't Hunter Biden's expertise. We know that's not true. So those are the questions that Joe Biden is afraid of, and that's what Democrats didn't want to face in a general election. And so I think they better be careful what they're asking for. But we don't know. Again, we don't know who our opponent is going to be. It may not yet be one of these two guys. Who knows?
Anything can happen, because we're also talking about, I honestly, did you ever expect, Tim Murtaugh, that the president would be the youngest guy left standing?
Well, I tell you what, the president is absolutely the most energetic person of any age that I've ever been around. So, I mean, age is obviously a state of being. A state of mind. It doesn't I don't think it matters to anybody that the president is older or younger or what. I mean, the energy that this guy attacks the job with is just astounding. He's going to run circles around. It doesn't matter who his opponent is. I mean, we see him. He goes all day long, and then he flies halfway across the country and gives a 90-minute speech at a rally, and he's ready for more. It's amazing.
And so what do you think is going to happen with debates? My advice, Tim, is that he refused to settle unless he named one moderator, Biden named the other moderator, and those two moderators agree on a third. I would not let the network set this stuff up. What's the thinking at Team Trump about fall debates with whoever the nominee is, likely Biden?
Well, something's got to get fixed in these debates because you're right. The moderators have just been awful. You know, you got John Harwood, who supposedly is going to go in there in the last cycle and act like he's some sort of middle of the road impartial moderator, which is obviously, if you see him on TV now, I mean, that guy's dropped all pretense. He's a card carrying Democrat, and to think that he got through the screening process last time is astounding. So, yeah, there's got to be something done. Ultimately, it's going to be the president's call. You know, he wants to debate. It's a good exchange of ideas, and it's a good way to draw contrast between the two. And we'll see. There has to be some real discussions about making the process better and more fair, because it actually does a disservice to viewers and voters with the way that it is now too. So
what do you think of my suggestion? Is just one nominee gets the name, one for there are three debates. And I don't mind where the Presidential Commission scheduled them, and I don't mind the colleges they're on, but I don't want the networks to run them. So if the president names one and the Democratic nominee names one and those two agree, that's just the standard arbitration panel selection process all across the United States.
Yeah, that's as good as idea as any, and we're going to have those discussions, and they'll be, I'm sure, hopefully behind closed doors as the negotiations go on. But discussions sometimes break out into the open, as they do in Washington. So we'll see.
Are you astonished by the way that Mike Bloomberg fell apart? I mean, just completely. No. He's making John Connally the happiest man in heaven because John Connally no longer owns the most expensive delegates in the world.
Yeah, what's he paying? $1.25 million per delegate these days. And look, he got a better deal than Tom Steyer did. Steyer spent $260 million and got none. But no, it's not. Look, Bloomberg was running essentially the Wizard of Oz campaign the whole time, right? $600 million of TV ads. And the first time something went wrong was when people actually got to hear from him himself.
Yeah, glass jaw Mike. It really is glass jaw Mike.
If he never set foot on the debate stage, he might be winning.
That's exactly right. Tim Murtaugh, keep coming back from Trump 2020. Follow him at Tim Murtaugh on Twitter. Follow me at Course America. To ReliefFactor.com. It is my third reminder of the day. It is the time I always tell you get the lime green bag with the North Carolina blue shouting out at you and saying on your shelf, take me, take me, take me before you jump in that car. Because your back's going to hurt, your knees are going to hurt, your ankles are going to hurt, everything's going to hurt. So go get your Relief Factor bag. Support for the temporary relief of minor aches and pains. And Bernie's got a lot of them today. Elizabeth Warren's got even more. Mike Bloomberg's got the most. We should send Relief Factor to everyone except Joe Biden, but he probably needs it as well. As Tim Murtaugh just pointed out, until 48 hours ago, Democrats thought he was unelectable. I love that line. Bernie didn't get rehabilitated. He got rescued. If you need rehabilitation, go get ReliefFactor.com. That's what ReliefFactor.com is for. It's for rehabilitation. For people who are feeling bad, who got the ordinary aches and pains of aging, or you've done something wrong, or you fell down like I didn't, tore your rotator cuff, whatever it is, ReliefFactor.com, ReliefFactor.com. Don't go anywhere, America. I'll be right back. 1-800-520-1234. Are you looking forward to a Biden-Trump race? Stay tuned.
Portions of the Hugh Hewitt Show brought to you by Sierra Pacific Mortgage. For more info, call 888-888-1172.
Welcome back, America. It's Hugh Hewitt. I'm still standing. The Democrats are having fun with me on Twitter this morning because I thought Joe Biden was dead on Saturday. And I always speak my mind. All I can ever do is tell you what I think. And I was wrong. Joe is back in it. But here's what I actually think. Here's what I was wrong about John McCain in 2008. I didn't think he could get the nomination, but I was right about his being unelectable. I wrote that in my book about Mitt Romney in 2006, A Mormon in the White House. I said, John McCain, great American, terrible senator, horrible Republican. And he turned out to be a terrible candidate for president in 2008. Suspended his campaign, sat around during the financial panic, got walloped. Joe Biden is a good man, I think, in his heart. I've only met him once. He was a good interview once. I got nothing against him. I think his son's got problems. His other son was an American hero. He's had a lot of suffering in his life, and he's come back strong, but he would be a terrible president, an absolute terrible president. Again, this is Margaret Brennan reading back to Robert Gates the words that Robert Gates wrote about Joe Biden in 2014, the former Secretary of Defense with Margaret Brennan. Again, Margaret Brennan is reading words that Robert Gates wrote about Joe Biden.
I think he's been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. Would he be an effective commander-in-chief?
I don't know. I don't know. I think I stand by that statement.
He just, Joe Biden is Joe Biden, and this is not going to change.
By the way, this is my little sister, Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh, no, this is oh, you switched on me. This is my wife. This is my sister. They switched on me.
Let me run through the Joe Biden board.
Let me tell you, I think I'm more in step with the lingo than any of them. Come on, man. Come on. Play the radio. Make sure the television, make sure you have the record player on at night. The phone. Iran is 14 million people. You're a lying dog-faced pony soldier. My name's Joe Biden. I'm a Democratic candidate for the United States Senate. Look me over. If you like what you see, help out. If not, vote for the other by. I'm the guy that came back after meeting with Deng Xiaoping and making the case that I believe China would join if we put pressure on them. Nelson Mandela walked out of prison and entered into discussions about apartheid. I had the great honor of meeting him. I had the great honor of being arrested with our UN ambassador on the streets of Soweto trying to get to see him on Robbins Island. Why am I stopping? No one else stops. Sometimes I wake up and I think it's 1920 and not 2020. Who in God's name needs 100 rounds and a bullet and a clip with a gun you have?
And I can get that done on health care by building on Obamacare with a Biden Medicare option in it. I can do this in terms of Ebola. In terms of dealing with the issues that would have been fundamentally different. We set up a whole system on the Ebola virus and with the Ebola disease that we were all concerned about, a trans-pandemic disease that existed.
If someone in this room got up, took off all her clothes and walked out the door, no man has the right to touch her.
Look, I know why I'm running. I'm running to make sure everybody has adequate health care and their taxes don't go up exponentially.
Guess what? If you elect me, you're not going to have your taxes are going to be raised, not cut. Well, I'm looking forward to appointing the first African-American woman to the United States Senate. 3,900 of them right here in the state of South Carolina.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. Thanks for your time. Please come back in less than 13 years, sir.
All right, Chuck. Thank you very much.
All right. It's Chris, but anyway.
Chris. I just did Chris.
Look, tomorrow's Superstar Tuesday, and I want to. We hold these truths to be self-evident. All men and women created by you know the thing.
By the way, this is my little sister, Valerie, and I'm Jill's husband. Oh, no, this is you switched on me.
All right, so it's not
my sister. They switched on me.
It's not that. All right, that's the Joe board. The Joe board is just the gaffes this year. I'm not even playing the old gaffes, like when he was talking about SARS.
I would tell members of my family, and I wouldn't go anywhere in confined places now. It's not that it's going to Mexico. It's you're in a confined aircraft. When one person sneezes, it goes all the way through the aircraft.
I'm not going to, all I have to do is play the current stuff, but mostly I got to play this.
I think he's been wrong on nearly every major foreign policy and national security issue over the past 4 decades. would he be an effective commander-in-chief?
I don't know. I don't know. I think I stand by that statement.
Biden didn't get rehabilitated. Tim Murtaugh said he got rescued. I think he's right. I was wrong that Joe was down and out, but he's back, and he's going to be our Bobo doll for the next 10 months. Honest to goodness. And Media Matters, go scribble that down. We're not going to stop. Joe Biden's got a record dating to 1973. Oh, my goodness gracious. When the Oppo research people, just imagine the Oppo research people at Team Trump, how tired they are already. And then someone dumps the book from 1973 and says, go see what he said about Watergate. Joe Biden. Oh, my goodness. What a day. I'll be back tomorrow, America. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, Generalissimo. The interview with Admiral Stavridis is posted. The interview with James Lankford is posted. You've got to go to YouTube and look up the Hugh Hewitt channel to find Tim Murtaugh, and you should do that. I'll be back tomorrow on the next Hugh Hewitt Show.